ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. On behalf of Indian Institute of World Culture, a very warm welcome for today's much anticipated play, The Prophet and the Poet, by the internationally acclaimed theatre group, Bangalore Little Theatre. And this play has been written and directed by Professor Vijay Padaki, who is one of the leading members of the Bangalore Little Theatre. So I welcome Professor Vijay Padaki and his team for this play. And today's sponsors, Sri Neelakanta and Dr. Kusuma Bhat, both of them are there with us. So I also warmly welcome both of them. Thank you, sir. Today being Gandhi Jayanti, it's so apt that we are having the play between the exchanges between Mahatma Gandhi and Rabindranath Tagore, their historic exchanges which happened. So this play is based around that, and it's a 90 minutes play. And it's also apt that the sponsor, Neelakanta, was also part of Bangalore Little Theatre. He was one of the founding members of Bangalore Little Theatre. The other tidbit is that it's so apt that tomorrow happens to be his birthday, so October 3rd. So an advance happy birthday wish, sir. So as is our norm, I will just give a brief introduction of the sponsors before we move on with the play. Sri Neelakanta and Dr. Kusuma Bhat. So this is a cultural program which they have instituted in 2021 at Indian Institute of World Culture. Sri Neelakanta, a well-known architect and has built many beautiful homes for famous artists in Kannada film industries like T.S. Nagabarana, Girish Kasarvalli, Srimati Umashri, Srinath, and to name many more. So these are a few names. He has been awarded an international award for Guhe of Sri C.R. Simha's house and has designed backdrops for many cultural programs in Kalakshiti, JSS Academy, etc. He has been Natak Academy member for more than 6 years and is a theatre person at heart. He now volunteers and advises Rangashankara, Nayana, Ravindra Kalakshetra in many theatrical programs. He was the governing council member for Suchitra Film Society and has constructed their open-air theatre some time back. And more so, as I have already told, he was one of the founding members of BLT 50 years back. And when Mr. Scott, who came from London to initiate some of the English plays in India, so he was at the forefront along with Mr. Scott in promoting English-based theatre plays in India. And Dr. Kusuma is a speech pathologist and an audiologist and was awarded by the Government of India National Award in 2019 in recognition of her service to the society. She has been involved in setting up Manonandana Trust, which is a trust for mentally and physically handicapped children, and has been nurturing these special needs children for more than 27 years. They have been conferred many Karnataka state awards for their philanthropic efforts. Dr. Kusuma is the director for this trust, and this endowment has been promoted by both of them. So once again, I thank both of them profusely and welcome to this particular program. Thank you. And today's play, which has been written and directed by Professor Vijay Padaki. So a small brief about Professor Padaki. So he's a theatre educator based in Bangalore. He has worn 2 caps all his life. One of them is in management with a special interest in organization and institutional development. He was part of the founding faculty of Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, and a tenured professor there. The other cap has been in theatre, being associated with Bangalore Little Theatre, BLT, from its inception in 1960. He is particularly committed to dissemination in the theatre, which is reflected in his long track record in writing and training. Professor Padaki was responsible for several long-term thrusts in BLT. For instance, the education enrichment program for schools, especially reaching the disadvantaged children, the history of ideas program of biohistorical plays, the New Voices program for promoting new writing for the theatre, the annual children's theatre production that also serves as a fundraiser for Indian Cancer Society, and the annual summer project on theatre, SPOT, that has inducted new faces into the theatre since 1988. Professor Padaki has written over 50 original plays in English, and he is series editor of the unique publication project of BLT, bringing out 10 volumes of play. And today's play of The Prophet and the Poet, so this has been screened 120 times till now, and today is the 121st time they are screening it. And I would quickly hand over to Professor Padaki. Before that, I would like to also give a brief background about BLT itself. BLT was created in 1960 and is the city's oldest and most widely respected theater society. It is a membership-based organization with a highly participatory form of management. BLT has celebrated its Diamond Jubilee year in 2020. BLT has a strong reputation in translation and adoption and in promoting playwriting activities since the 70s. A commitment to outreach activities has led to significant education and training initiatives, working with schools, colleges, and other institutions. Bangalore Little Theatre Foundation is registered as a public charitable trust. In 2006, an Academy of Theatre Arts was set up within the foundation to concentrate on theatre development activities, while BLT itself will continue with its performance emphasis. So with this small introduction about BLT, I would like to hand over the mic to Professor Padaki. So over to you, sir.
Thank you. Since I'm here, I might as well be done with a short introduction to the play. It's usually done without anybody on the stage from behind. But having been thrust before you now, I will take a couple of minutes for a very brief introduction. I promise you it will be brief. First of all, as he said, it's a very auspicious occasion. And so it's a great honor to be performing this play on Gandhi Jayanti. It's based on the historical exchanges between Gandhi and Gurudev Tagore, and you'll see what those exchanges are. I don't have to tell an enlightened audience like you that this invention of mankind has to be put away and turned off, preferably, or at least put on silent. Please don't wait for it to beep to realize that it's not off. Do it now. We were privileged, greatly privileged, to be invited to perform the opening shows of this play at the places hallowed by the two great personalities, Sabarmati Ashram in Ahmedabad, Shantiniketan in Bolpur, and Rabindranath Bharati, Jorashako, Tagore's ancestral home, which is now looked after by Rabindranath Bharati in Kolkata. What more could one ask for? Now it is our pleasure to present the play to you in this beautiful auditorium. It's such a delight performing here. It's as if Mr. Venkatesh designed the auditorium just for this play. There is usually a request at the end for a discussion on the play. Questions, comments, reflections. You're most welcome to do that. It's completely voluntary, of course. But we'd be most happy to have you stay back. And at that time, I will introduce the artists to you, the team, and then it's yours. Please feel free to share your comments with the team. Right? Please do not take pictures during the play, because the cell phone is a distraction for other members of the audience. All right? Please do not use the phone to take pictures. It's a major distraction. Any photography is by the designated photographer seated in the middle of the hall. Thank you very much, and that should do. I'm going to disappear now to the back while the actors take over, and I will be playing some music originally composed for this play. The music and the entire soundtrack through the play is on organ. Why not sitar? Why not veena? Why organ? I'd like you to think about this, and maybe you can ask me a question, or maybe you can comment on it at the end. Why organ? All right? But it's original music composed for this play. And just before we start, what better way to start this play than listening to the voice of Rabindranath Tagore? Thank you.
মনে রেখো ও তবু মনে রেখো যদি দূরে যাই চলে তবু মনে রেখো যদি পুরাতন প্রেম ঢাকা পড়ে যায় নব প্রেম জালে মনে রেখো ও তবু মনে রেখো যদি থাকি কাছাকাছি দেখিতেই না পাও ছায়ার মতো আছি না আছি মনে রেখো ও তবু মনে রেখো যদি জল আসে আঁখি পাতে যদি জল আসে আঁখি পাতে একদিন যদি খেলা থেমে যায় মধুরাতে তবু মনে রেখো একদিন যদি বাধা পড়ে কাজে শারদ প্রাতে মনে রেখো যদি পড়িয়া মনে ছল ছল যমুনাই দেখা দেয় নয়ন কোণে তো মনে রেখো
January 30, 1948. 3 bullets were fired at point-blank range. 2 words were heard when the lifeless body collapsed on the lawns of Birla House in New Delhi.
Hey Ram. This was a tragic end for the illustrious son of India, the one who had done more than all else put together to free India from the shackles of British subjugation. Another illustrious son of India, who had done more than all else to gain recognition for India on the intellectual stage of the world, had ended his conscious moments by dictating these words.
O deceitful one, in simple life you have craftily scattered the snares of false faith. One who endures your deception without effort is rewarded by you with the right to eternal peace.
In their last moments, one remembered his God with reverence. The other called his God deceitful and staked his claim on eternal peace as reward from his deceitful muse. Friends, our parents and their parents grew up under the shadows of these two great sons of India, one a prophet, the other a poet. My friends and I must get to know them afresh. On my right is Naveen Tated, who is studying the life and work of Mahatma Gandhi, and Karan Singh on my left is finding out more about Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore. My name is Minty Jain. I am joining them in their discoveries. To start with, we find one from a western corner of India, Gujarat, the other from across the subcontinent in the east, Bengal. One called the other Mahatma, and the other addressed the first as Gurudev. They admired and revered each other, as few friends do. They differed with each other, as few adversaries do. They met for the first time after half their lives had been spent, when both of them were acknowledged icons held in high esteem not only in India, but in the global arena. It may be interesting to ask them if they have any recollection of their first meeting. Let us begin with the Mahatma. Does he remember his first meeting with Gurudev?
He is not quite sure. It could have been the year 1901 when he had come to Calcutta from South Africa to attend the meeting of the Indian National Congress. He was to present the case of the 100,000 British Indians in South Africa.
And what about Rabindranath Tagore?
Even he is not quite sure about the meeting, although he was a member of the reception committee of the Congress at the time.
In the year 1901, Tagore was 40 years old and Gandhi was 32. Neither had attained a stature that extended much beyond their primary spheres of activity. That was Bengali literature for Tagore. For Gandhi, it was representing the oppressive British Indians in South Africa. In December 13, two friends of Tagore, Charlie Andrews and Willie Pearson, left for South Africa to advance the cause of Gandhi there. 2 days before their departure, a meeting was organized by Tagore and others in the town hall of Kolkata to consider the position of Indians in South Africa. Andrews immediately sensed resonant wavelengths between the two. He wrote to Tagore in January 1914, "I had no difficulty in seeing from the first Mr. Gandhi's position and accepting it, for in principle it is essentially the same as yours. A true independence, a reliance upon spiritual force, a fearless courage in the face of temporal power, and withal, a deep and burning charity for all men." An apt assessment of the character of two noble souls. When Gandhi decided to disband his Phoenix ashram in South Africa and return to India, it was Charlie Andrews who suggested that the residents of the Phoenix ashram stay at Gurudev Shantiniketan before Gandhi could make alternate arrangements for them. The boys from Phoenix arrived in Shantiniketan in November 1914. Soon after their arrival,
I wrote to Charlie Andrews, the Phoenix boys, they have discipline where they should have ideals. They are trained to obey, for obedience is good, not because it is good in itself, but because it is a sacrifice. These boys are in danger of forgetting to wish for anything, and wishing is the best part of attainment. However, a few days later, I wrote to Mahatma ji, "Dear Mr. Gandhi, I write this letter to thank you for allowing your boys to become our boys as well, and thus form a living link in the sadhana of both of our lives. Yours very sincerely."
indeed, this prophetic living link laid a foundation for a relationship that was unique and lifelong. The two met for the first time in Shantiniketan in 1915. As a commemoration, March 10 is observed as Gandhi Punya Divas in Shantiniketan even today. Both of them loved India and deeply respected her heritage. Both were pained to the core at the conduct of British in India. Both sought genuine freedom, Swaraj. But the path sought by one differed from that of the other. One sought political freedom as an end. For the other, it was a means of awakening the inner soul, Atma Shakti. As early as 1918, Gandhi wanted Hindi to be the national language.
Dear Gurudev, is not Hindi the only possible national language for interprovincial intercourse and for all other national proceedings? Should not Hindi be the language principally used at the forthcoming Congress? I feel that if we are to touch the masses and if national servants are to come in contact with the masses all over India, the above questions ought to be treated as of the utmost urgency. I am yours sincerely.
Dear Mr. Gandhi, of course Hindi is a possible national language for interprovincial intercourse in India. But about its introduction at the Congress, I think we cannot do it for a long time to come. It is truly a foreign language for the Madras people. Most of the politicians will find it difficult to express themselves adequately in this language, so Hindi will have to remain optional in our national proceedings. Yours very sincerely.
The strain of differences had started to tell. Agreement on the malady, disagreement on the remedy, accord on the ends, discord on the means. In 1920, Gandhi invited Tagore to Ahmedabad to attend the 6th Gujarati Sahitya Parishad.
Dear Gurudev, we are all deeply grateful to you for your acceptance of the invitation. Every effort is being made not to overload you with engagements or tamashas. Will you please let me know, if necessary by wire, how long you will be able to give to Gujarat and whether you could visit one or two important centers? The second question is regarding your residence. Will you put up at the ashram? Nothing would delight me more than to have you at the ashram. I am most anxious that you should give the benefit of your presence to the many at the ashram who claim to have been your pupils. It is on the bank of the Sabarmati. You can either stay at the ashram or at a private bungalow in Ahmedabad with all the appointments. Will you please also let me know any special arrangements or things you will desire? Yours, sincere.
That meeting where the audience had requested a Gujarati translation of my extempore speech. All the stalwarts of Gujarati literature present there had expressed their inability to do so. Gujarati version right away.
Gandhi had advocated boycott of British educational institutions. He had prescribed Satyagraha, Charkha and Swaraj as the trident of his freedom movement. Tagore objected to each one of these, either in letters to friends or in articles published. Gandhi defended his position firmly through the same media. The debate between them was on political issues, but was elevated to a philosophical plane.
Dear Mahatma ji, passive resistance is a force which is not necessarily moral in itself. It can be used against truth as well as for it. The danger inherent in all force grows stronger when it is likely to gain success, for then it becomes temptation. I know your teaching is to fight against evil by the help of the good, but such a fight is for heroes and not for men led by impulses of the moment, yours, etc.
2 years later, he wrote in an article, Brahma Vidya in India has for its object mukti, emancipation, while Buddhism has nirvana, extinction. It may be argued that both have the same idea by different names, but names represent attitudes of mind, emphasize particular aspects of truth.
Mukti draws our attention to the positive and nirvana to the negative side of truth.
In my humble opinion, rejection is as much an ideal as is the acceptance of a thing. It is as necessary to reject untruth as it is to accept truth. All religions teach that two opposite forces act upon us and that the human endeavor consists of a series of eternal rejections and acceptances. Non-cooperation with evil is as much a duty as cooperation with good. I venture to suggest that the poet has done an unconscious injustice to Buddhism in describing nirvana as merely a negative state. I make bold to say that mukti, emancipation, is as much a negative state as nirvana. Emancipation from or extinction of the bondage of flesh leads to ananda, eternal bliss. Let me close this part of my argument by drawing attention to the fact that the final word of the Upanishads, Brahma Vidya, is not neti. The poet has come to the conclusion that non-cooperation is not dignified enough for the India of his vision, that it is a doctrine of negation and despair, separation, narrowness. I shall endeavor in all humility to answer the poet's doubts. I may fail to convince him or the reader who may have been touched by his eloquence, but I would like to assure him and India that non-cooperation in conception is not any of the things he fears, and he need have no cause to be ashamed of his country for having adopted non-cooperation. Non-cooperation may have come in advance of its time. The world must then wait.
I do not say for a moment that we should belittle the work immediately to hand, but when the bird is roused by the dawn, its awakening is not absorbed altogether in its search for food. Its wings respond unwarily to the call of the sky. Its throat pours forth songs for joy of the new light. Universal humanity has sent us its call today. We must respond. Response is the only true sign of life.
True to his poetic instinct, the poet lives for the morrow and would have us do likewise. He presents to our admiring gaze the beautiful picture of the birds early in the morning singing hymns of praise as they soar into the sky. These birds had their day's food and soared with rested wings, in whose veins new blood streamed through the previous night. But I have had the pain of watching birds who for want of strength could not be coaxed even to their wings. The human bird under the Indian sky gets up weaker than when he pretended to retire. For millions, it is an eternal vigil or an eternal trance. The hungry millions ask for one poem, invigorating food. It cannot be given to them, they must earn it, and they can earn only by the sweat of their brow. If we will take care of today, God will take care of tomorrow.
And so on. They used imagery for arguments and played on each other's images to press home a point. A political debate on a poetic plane. The difference in philosophical positions on non-cooperation remained.
The reason for my refusing to advise students to leave their schools, it is because the mere anarchy of a mere emptiness never tempts me, even when it is resorted to as a temporary measure. I could not lightly take upon myself the tremendous responsibility of a mere negative program for them, which would uproot their life from its soil, however thin and poor that soil might be. What irony of fate is this, that I should be preaching cooperation of cultures between East and West on one side of the ocean, when the doctrine of non-cooperation is preached on the other side. I do not believe in the material civilization of the West, just as I do not believe in the physical body to be the highest truth in man, but I still believe in a true meeting of the East and the West.
I hope I am as great a believer in free air as the great poet. I do not want my house to be walled on all sides and my windows to be stuffed. I want the cultures of all the lands to be blown about my house as freely as possible, but I refuse to be blown off my feet by any. The poet's concern is largely about the students. He is of the opinion that they should not have been called upon to give up their government schools before they had other schools to go to. I must differ with him here. I have never been able to make a fetish of literary training. My experience has proved to my satisfaction that literary training by itself adds not an inch to one's moral height, and that character building is independent of literary training. I am firmly of the opinion that the government schools have unmanned us, rendered us helpless and godless. They have filled us with discontent, and providing no remedy for discontent, have made us despondent. They have made us what we were intended to become, clerks and interpreters.
Tagore acknowledged readily the loftiness of the Mahatma's point of view as well as the principled position taken. He wrote, "Previously, the vision of our political leaders had never reached beyond the English-knowing classes because the country meant for them only that bookish aspect of it which is found in the Englishman's history."
Here was the truth at last, and not a mere quotation out of a book. So the name of Mahatma, which was given to him, is his true name. Who else has felt so many men of India to be his own flesh and blood?
But his own point of view also merited assertion.
But if having seen truth, our belief in it is not confirmed, what is the good of it all? Our mind must acknowledge the truth of intellect just as our heart does the truth of love. Today, in the atmosphere of the country, there is a spirit of persecution, which is not that of armed force, but something still more alarming because it is invisible. I find further that those who have their doubts as to the present activities, if they happen to whisper them out, however cautiously, however guardedly, feel some admonishing hand clutching them within. There was a newspaper which one day had the temerity to disapprove in a feeble way of the burning of cloth. The very next day, the editor was shaken out of his balance by the agitation of his readers.
How long would it take for the fire which was burning cloth to reduce his paper to ashes? The sight that meets my eyes is on the one hand people immensely busy, on the other intensely afraid. What I hear on every side is that reason and culture as well must be closured. It is only necessary to cling to an unquestioning obedience.
Obedience to whom? To some mantra, some unreasoned creed.
The Bard of Shantiniketan, in a brilliant essay on the present movement, presents a series of word pictures which he alone can paint. It is an eloquent protest against authority, slave mentality, or whatever description one gives of a blind acceptance of a passing mania, whether out of fear or hope. The poet tells us summarily to reject anything that does not appeal to our reason or heart. With all this, one must heartily agree, and the poet deserves the thanks of his countrymen for standing up for truth and reason. I would feel extremely sorry to discover that the country had unthinkingly and blindly followed all I had said or done. I am quite conscious of the fact that blind surrender to love is often more mischievous than a forced surrender to the lash of the tyrant. There is hope for the slave of the brute, but none for that of love. But whilst I agree with all that the poet has said, as of the necessity of watchfulness, lest we cease to think, I must not be understood to endorse the proposition that there is any such blind obedience on a large scale in the country today.
From our master, the Mahatma, we must learn the truth of love in all its purity. But the science and art of building up Swaraj is a vast subject. For this task, there must be aspiration and emotion, but no less must study and thought be there likewise. For that, the economist must think, the mechanic must labor, the educationist and statesman must teach and contrive. In a word, the mind of the country must exert itself in all directions. Above all, the spirit of inquiry throughout the whole country must be kept intact and untrammeled. Its mind not made timid or inactive by compulsion, open or secret. God has given Mahatma the voice that can call, for in him there is truth. Why should this not be our long-awaited opportunity? But his call is in one narrow field alone. To one and all he simply says, spin and weave, spin and weave. Is this the call of the new age to new creation? When nature called to the bee to take refuge in the narrow life of the hive, millions of bees responded to it for the sake of efficiency and accepted the loss of sex in consequence. Any country, the people of which can agree to become neuters for the sake of some temptation or command, carries within itself its own prison house. To spin is easy, therefore for all men it is an imposition hard to bear. The mind is no less valuable than cotton thread. Consider the burning of cloth, heaped up before the very eyes of our motherland, shivering and ashamed in her nakedness. What is the nature of the call to do this? The question of using or refusing cloth of a particular manufacturer belongs mainly to economic science. The discussion of the matter by our countrymen should have been in the language of economics.
I must confess that I do not draw a sharp or any distinction between economics and ethics. Economics that hurts the moral well-being of an individual or a nation are immoral and therefore sinful. Thus the economics that permit one country to prey upon another are immoral. It is sinful for me to wear the latest finery of Regent Street when I know that if I had but worn the things made by my neighboring spinners and weavers, that would have clothed me and fed and clothed them. On the knowledge of my sin bursting upon me, I must consign the foreign garments to the flames and thus purify myself, and thenceforth rest content with the rough khadi made by my neighbors. Upon knowing that my neighbors, having given up the occupation, may not take kindly to the spinning wheel, I must take it up myself and thus make it popular.
Charlie Andrews, a friend of both, was worried. Would such differences drive the two noble souls apart? Taking a cautious step, he arranged a meeting between them in Tagore's ancestral home at Jora Shako in Kolkata. Only the three of them were present, and neither Tagore nor Gandhi issued any statements to the press. Many years
Gurudev, you were yourself a leader and promoter of the Swadeshi movement in India over 20 years ago. You always wanted Indians to stand on their own feet as Indians and not to try to be poor copies of Englishmen. My Swaraj movement is a natural child of your Swadeshi. You should join me and strengthen it.
Gandhiji, why must we be like the rest of the world, suffering from a cult of selfish and short-sighted nationalism? India has always offered hospitality to all nations and creeds. I have come to believe that we in India still have much to learn from the West and its science, and we have still to learn through education to collaborate among ourselves.
We have already achieved Hindu-Muslim unity, Gurudev.
I do not agree. You have introduced it only on the political platform, where Muslim and Hindu happily hold a whip together to crack it at the British. I have never had any love for British officialdom, but can you really say you have a genuine friendship with the Muslim deep in your hearts? When the British either walk out or are driven out, what will happen then?
The whole movement is based on the principle of non-violence, Gurudev. And that is why, as a poet who believes in peace, you can enter my movement and work for it.
Come here, Gandhiji. Come and look over the edge of this veranda. Look down there and see what your non-violent followers are up to. They have stolen cloth from the shops on Chitpur Road. They have lit that bonfire in my courtyard and are now howling around it like a pack of demented jackals. Is that non-violence? As you surely know yourself, we are a very emotional people. Can you keep these emotions under strict control with your non-violent principles? You know you can't, Gandhiji. Only by educating their children together for 2 to 3 generations can you eventually overcome the hostility that exists between Hindu and Muslim.
Gurudev, you say you believe in education. The education of Indians by Indians. My movement too is about education, for a national system of education. Thousands of young teachers and students are giving up their government and missionary schools every day and enlisting in these new schools.
Yes, and you first pick out the best among them to enlist in your political program, while the more stupid are allowed to stay behind and open schools of a kind that offer only a travesty of education, not the real thing. Is that your national education plan? India should today be inviting teachers and professors from all over the world to come and teach in India and also to learn from our own cultural heritage. This is what I am now trying to do at Shantiniketan.
I see. If you cannot do much for us, may I ask for a simpler service? You can at least put the young Bhadralok with their Calcutta degrees to shame by getting them all to sit down and spin. You can lead the whole nation by spinning yourself.
Poems I can spin, songs I can spin. But what a mess I would make, Gandhiji, of your precious cotton.
A brief and diplomatic statement was issued by Andrews. They had a difference of temperament so wide it was extremely difficult to arrive at a common intellectual understanding, though the moral ties of friendship remained entirely unbroken. Soon after, in early 1922, Gandhi was arrested and imprisoned. For almost 2 years, the national movement came to a standstill. Naturally, the exchange between the two was also interrupted. Gandhi was released in 1924. Among the first to greet him was Tagore, first by telegram.
We rejoice.
And then by a letter. Dear Gandhiji, I do not want to dwell upon my joy at the fact of your freedom from imprisonment, but I cannot remain silent and inactive when I feel great anxiety at the unbounded prospect of freedom which other people have in liberty and peace of mind. All I can do to serve you in this crisis is to send Charlie to you as he knows how to do. This was at a personal level. When it came to political issues, I am not ashamed to admit that the depths of my mind have not been moved by the Charkha agitation. I find that where hands are reluctant to work the spindle, mouths are all the more busy spinning its praise.
We have had our experience of this in the tremendous exaltation produced by the imaginary easy prospect of Hindu-Muslim unity. And therefore I am afraid of a blind faith on a very large scale in the Charkha, more so in a country which is so liable to succumb to the lure of shortcuts when pointed out by a personality about whose moral earnestness they can have no doubt. Our country is a land of rites and ceremonies, so that we have more faith in worshipping the feet of the priest than the divinity whom he serves. Only to such a country can come the Charkha as the emblem of her deliverance, and the people, dazed into obedience by some specious temptation, go on turning the Charkha in the seclusion of their corners, dreaming all the while that the car of Swaraj of itself rolls onward in triumphal progress at every turn of their wheel. The discussion so far has proceeded on the assumption that the large-scale production of homespun thread and cloth will result in alleviation of the country's poverty. That is, after all, a gratuitous assumption. Those who know have expressed grave doubts on this point. It is better for an ignoramus like myself to refrain from entering into this controversy. My complaint is that by the promulgation of this confusion between Swaraj and Charkha, the mind of the country is being distracted from Swaraj. To give the Charkha the first place in our striving for the country's welfare is only a way to make our insulted intelligence recoil in despairing inaction. Heaps of thread and piles of cloth do not constitute the subject of a great picture of human welfare. The village in which the people come together to earn for themselves their food, their health, their education, to gain for themselves the joy of so doing, shall be the village to light the lamp on the way to Swaraj. It will not be difficult, therefore, to light other lamps one after another and thus illuminate more and more of the path along which Swaraj will advance, not propelled by the mechanical revolution of the Charkha, but by the process of its own organic growth. It is extremely distasteful for me to have to differ from Mahatma Gandhi in regard to any matter of principle or method. What could be greater joy than to join hands in the field with one for whom one has such love and reverence? Nothing is more wonderful to me than Mahatma Ji's great moral personality. How often has my personal feeling of regard strongly urged me to accept at Mahatma Gandhi's hands my enlistment as a follower of the Charkha cult.
But as often has my reason and conscience restrained me, lest I should be a party to the raising of the Charkha to a higher place than is its due, thereby distracting attention from other more important factors in our task.
When Sir Rabindranath's criticism of the Charkha was published some time ago, several friends asked me to reply to it. His criticism has not displeased me. Why should mere disagreement with my views displease? On the contrary, frank criticism pleases me, for it makes our friendship all the richer for our disagreements. I am obliged to make these prefatory remarks, as Dame Rumour has whispered that jealousy is the root of all that criticism. Such baseless suspicion betrays an atmosphere of weakness and intolerance. Of what should the poet be jealous in me? Jealousy presupposes the possibility of rivalry. Well, I have never succeeded in writing a single rhyme in my life. There is nothing of the poet about me I cannot aspire after his greatness. He is the undisputed master of the craft. The world today does not possess his equal as a poet. The poet makes his gopis dance to the tune of his flute. I wander after my beloved Sita, the charkha, and seek to deliver her from the 10-headed monster from Japan, Manchester, Paris, etc. The poet is an inventor. He creates, destroys, recreates. I am an explorer, and having discovered something, I must cling to it. Thus, there is no competition between us. I may say in all humility that we complement each the other's activities. The poet does not read Young India. He has no need to, he is not expected to. All he knows about the movement is what he has picked up from table talk. He has therefore denounced all that he has imagined to be the excesses of charkha. Around the charkha, that's amidst the people who have shed their idleness and those who have understood the value of cooperation. A national servant would build up a program of anti-malaria campaign, improved sanitation, settlement of village disputes, conservation and breeding of cattle, and hundreds of other beneficial activities. Wherever charkha work is fairly established, all such ameliorative activity is going on according to the capacity of the villagers and the workers concerned. The merits I have claimed for charkha remain undamaged by the poet's battery. If I adore the poet, as he knows I do, it is in spite of the differences between us.
While the debate raged, Gandhi's reference to Tagore as Sir stirred up a hornet's nest. Following the traumatic massacre of innocents in the Jallianwala Bagh episode 7 years earlier, the poet had asked the Viceroy to relieve him of the title. Many tongues wagged and there were many loud whispers, as it was taken as sarcasm not befitting the Mahatma. Gandhi wrote to Vidhushekar Shastri, a leading member of the faculty at Vishwa Bharati. December 21, 1925. Dear Shastri Mahashay, I had Ramanand Babu's article in the Modern Review on the Charkha read out to me. I must own that it has deeply pained me. I know that he is too good to willfully misunderstand anybody. It is my misfortune that what I had written with the purest motives should be understood as being otherwise written even by men like him. I should not pardon myself if even Gurudev so understood my article. I can but explain my position and ask every friend in
Shantiniketan to accept my explanation. Gurudev's title was not used in ignorance. I knew that he had asked to renounce his title, but he was not so relieved. And Charlie and I had discussed over it, and we both came to the conclusion that the title not having been taken away, we Gurudev's friends should make no fuss of it. We even felt that it would be courtesy to make use of the title now and then. I know what poison has been emitted over these boycotts. I have therefore gone out of my way to describe titled personages by their titles in order to show that the use of titles was no crime. It was thus out of regard for Gurudev that I used the title. It was used so automatically that I knew I had used it only when Mahadev drew my attention to it. Lastly, pray believe me when I assure you that I wrote that article in no unloving, unfriendly or critical spirit. I wrote it to disarm criticism and to testify that his differences with me could not possibly diminish my regard and affection for him. So please, all of you, regard me as one of you, incapable of misunderstanding the poet or his mission. I must not be deserted or misunderstood by you. Do please ask Ramanand Babu to let me have a line to say that he accepts my explanation. And will you get an assurance from the poet that he at least did not misunderstand me? You may share this with anyone you like. With love, yours. M.K.G.
Dear Mahatma Ji, I have seen the letter you have written to our Shastri Mahashay. It is full of your noble spirit. You have my assurance that even if you ever hit me hard in the cause of what you think as truth, our personal relationship based upon mutual respect will bear that strain and will remain uninjured with Namaskar.
January 18, 1930. The two met in Ahmedabad at Sabarmati Ashram. They
behave yourself, Gurudev.
Allow me to ask, what are your specific plans for the country? If you make the announcement that we are to seek complete freedom and you do not have any program to offer, would it not destroy our credibility?
I am furiously thinking about it night and day. I do not see any light in the surrounding darkness. But even if we cannot think of an effective program, we could not possibly hesitate from declaring the country's objective, which can only mean full independence. The dominion status means what we have never understood it to mean.
We must know that we have not lost our country. At present, it is an illusion to believe that the country is ours. Let us begin with that confidence and a firm belief that to own our country is our right. When I left America, I had hoped that you would create a complete service-oriented organization of our own country where everyone can contribute according to their own capacity. If you can entrust me with education, I will be too happy to render my services. We must find out the strengths lying dormant within the country and employ them. We need a person who enjoys the confidence of the people. You do. In my opinion, that is the real program for freedom. First announce that we are free, we shall then look after our own affairs, and we shall try to serve our nation.
I am indeed thinking of creating an organization fit for the needs of the people. I do not believe I have lost my control, not for a moment. Perhaps I have more control now, but I have nothing to offer. Today we do not have adequate resources to run the educational institutions. I have nothing to attract you with, and I would not like to misuse your name.
Our first priority must be a program acceptable to the entire nation.
You do not have it today, but you will find it soon enough.
Another matter, I merely pronounce my thoughts as they come to me. When I disagreed with your non-cooperation, I had said that cooperation must be sought with whomsoever it is possible. We must
Soon after, Gandhi found his program. It was to defy the SALT Act. He marched to Dandi in March 1930 when Tagore had already left for Europe. Gandhi never returned to Ahmedabad and Tagore did not visit the city again. In Germany, Tagore saw a passion play based on the last days of the Christ's life. Soon after, almost overnight, he wrote a poem directly in English and called it The Child. It begins, "What of the night, they ask? No answer comes. For the blind, time gropes in a maze and knows not its path or purpose. The darkness in the valley stares like the dead eye sockets of a giant. The clouds like a nightmare oppress the sky, and the massive shadows lie scattered like the torn limbs of the night. The images build up. A lost land, its people in agony, rendered directionless, awaiting a savior. The full poem has 10 stanzas rich in imagery. The women weep and wail. They cry that their children are lost in a wilderness of contrary paths with confusion at the end. Others defiantly rebelled, shake with raucous laughter, their lascivious limbs unshrinkingly loud, for they think that nothing matters.
There on the crest of the hill stands the man of faith amid the snow-white silence. He scans the sky for some signal of light, and as the clouds thicken and the night birds scream as he flies, he cries, "Brother, despair not, for man is great." But they never heed him, for they believe that the elemental brute is eternal, and goodness in its depth is darkly cunning and deception. When beaten and wounded, they cry, "Brother, where art thou?" The answer comes, "I am by your side." But they cannot see in the dark, and they argue that the voice is of their own desperate desire, that men are ever condemned to fight for phantoms in an interminable desert of mutual menace.
A long poem written in one stretch, the images hurtling to a climax. Someone from the crowd suddenly stands up and, pointing to the leader with merciless finger, breaks out, "False prophet, thou hast deceived us." Others take up the cry one by one. Women hiss their hatred and men growl. At last, one bolder than others suddenly deals him a blow. They cannot see his face, but fall upon him in a fury of destruction and hit him till he lies prone upon the ground, his life extinct. The night is still. The sound of the distant waterfall comes muffled, and a faint breath of jasmine floats in the air.
The women sob out loud, and the men hide their faces in their hands. A few try to slink away unnoticed, but their crying keeps them chained to their victim. They ask each other in bewilderment, "Who will show us the path?" The old man from the east bends his head and says, "The victim." They sit still and silent. Again speaks the old man. "We refused him in doubt, we've killed him in anger. Now we shall accept him in love. For in his death he lives in the life of us all, the great victim." And they all stand and mingle their voices and sing,
"Victory to the victim."
Pardon me, Gurudev, a question. How in the world did you predict the end I was to meet?
The reply might well have been the words of another poet writing about Tagore 75 years later. A poem written by William Radici has Gurudev engaged in an imaginary conversation in which he says,
"Keep on, keep trying, I did no more. I merely made to love and adore images of my seeking. Poems of beauty, songs of joy, rhyme for the learning girl or boy. Questions, never replies. Don't worry if you don't know me yet. When all solutions have been met that day, my spirit dies."
As tempting as it might be to extend this detour into the realm of poetic image making, we must return now to the realm of hard political reality.
It was late 1930 and Gandhi had declined an invitation to the first round table conference. It was a principal decision as his conditions had not been accepted.
The invitation to a round table conference accorded to representatives of a people who can with perfect impunity be throttled into silence or trampled into a pulp is in itself a sign of the time undreamt of half a century ago. Mahatma Gandhi may not believe in the success of its obvious purpose, but he must acknowledge it represents the same moral principle which he himself invokes on behalf of his countrymen in their endeavor after self-government. The real importance of this conference is not in the opportunity it may offer of a cooperation with the British politicians, but with the sole force of the whole world. We must know that this conference is going to hold its sittings before the World Tribunal, whose approbation it is eager to win. The gesture is inspired not merely by the political necessity, but the necessity of a world sanction. It would have been worthy of Mahatma Gandhi if he had accepted unhesitatingly the seat offered to him.
The British agenda was to create separate electorates in India based on religious identities, which would also have geographical separations. Thus, Bengal would be divided into an eastern sector with a Muslim majority, while the western sector would have a Hindu identity. Tagore recognized this as a short-sighted and a politically motivated move with grave long-term consequences. On the other hand, Baba Saheb Ambedkar saw the agenda as an opportunity for the lowest castes of Hindus, the Harijans as Gandhi called them, to assert themselves and to seek a separate electorate for themselves. The Harijans were not Hindus, he argued, as the Hindu majority had never accepted them as their own. Naturally, Gandhi was fiercely opposed to the idea. He threatened a nationwide agitation and to go on an indefinite fast. In May 1932, Gandhi was imprisoned without a trial. The British government was going ahead with creating a separate electorate for the Harijans. Gandhi decided to go on a fast unto death. A disturbed Tagore sent him a telegram.
It is worth sacrificing precious life for the sake of India's unity and her integrity. Stop. Though we cannot anticipate what effect it may have upon our rulers, who may not understand its immense significance for our people, we feel certain that the supreme appeal of such self-offering to the conscience of our own countrymen will not be in vain. Stop. I fervently hope that we will not callously allow such a national tragedy to reach its extreme length. Stop. Our sorrowing hearts will follow your sublime penance. Stop. With reverence and love.
At about the same time, Tagore was very much in the thoughts of Gandhi. Even as the telegram was on its way, he was composing a letter to Tagore.
Dear Gurudev, it is the early morning and 3 o'clock of Tuesday. I enter the fiery gate at noon. If you can bless the effort, I want it. You have been to me a true friend because you have been a candid friend, often speaking your thoughts aloud. I had looked forward to a firm opinion from you one way or the other, but you have refused to criticize. Though it can now be only during my fast, I will yet prize your criticism if your heart condemns my actions. I am not too proud to make an open confession of my blunder, whatever the cost of confession, if I find myself in error. If your heart approves of the action, I want your blessings. It will sustain me, I hope. I have made myself clear. My love. Just as I was handing this to the superintendent, I got your loving and magnificent wire. It will sustain me in the midst of the storm I am about to enter.
And on the very next day, the poet wrote an essay for the general public to explain the true meaning of the fast. Let us try to understand the meaning of his message. From the beginning of human history, there has continued the cleavage between classes, those favored by circumstances exploiting the weakness of others and building a stronghold of their own pride of superiority upon the larger section of the community. Though this practice has been prevalent for long, yet we must assert that it is against the true spirit of man.
We, on our part in India, have banished a considerable number of our own countrymen into a narrow enclosure of insult, branding them with the sign of permanent degradation. A dungeon does not solely consist of brick and mortar confinement, but setting narrow limits to man's self-respect is a moral prison, more cruel for victims than the physical one, and more demoralizing for those who encourage it, passively or with pious fervor. The concrete fact of inequalities between individuals and races cannot be ignored, but to accept it as absolute and utilize it to deprive men of their human rights and comradeship is a social crime which multiplies fast in its heinousness. Against that deep-seated moral weakness in our society, Mahatma Ji has pronounced his ultimatum. And though it may be our misfortune to lose him in the battlefield, The fight will be passed on to every one of us to be carried on to the final end.
Within days, there was a deterioration in Gandhi's health. Greatly concerned, Tagore left Shantiniketan for Pune.
We left for Pune with hope in our hearts, even though the atmosphere was tense with foreboding. My companions bought newspapers at every big railway stall. The news was not very encouraging. Mahatma ji, according to the physicians, seemed to have definitely entered the danger zone. And yet, Mahatma ji had indeed triumphed, curbing intense physical anxiety and mental strain with an unbending will. Wavering between hope and fear, we reached Kalyan on the morning of September 26. Without delay, we started for Pune by the car which our hostess there had sent for us. Entering the city of Pune, we found armored cars and machine guns being maneuvered on the military grounds. Soldiers paraded along the city roads. Entering the home of our hostess, I sensed anxiety in the air. There was a shadow of suspense on every face. Mahatma ji's condition was precarious. It was Mahatma ji's day of silence. He had expressed a desire that I should be with him when he broke his silence at 1 o'clock. On our way to the Yerwada prison, at some distance from the gate, our car was stopped. A sentry on duty had been asked not to let any car pass till further orders. I had thought that nowadays in India, the road to the jail entrance is wide open. As a gentleman from our side proceeded to obtain sanction from the prison authorities, Shriman Devdas came along in a car, the jail permit in his hand. Later on, I heard that Mahatma ji had suddenly felt that our car had been obstructed on the way, though he had no information on that, and had sent his son to fetch us. Big iron doors swung wide open one after another and closed behind us. To our front was the arrogance of high walls, a fettered sky, straight-cut metal roads projecting ahead, few trees. Two major experiences of my life have come rather late. Only recently, I had crossed the threshold of a university, and in spite of a slight obstruction, here was I today, inside a regular prison house.
The master storyteller in him was not to be throttled by the grimness of the real life situation. A touch of humor too.
In the middle courtyard, under the thick shade of a young mango tree, lay Mahatma ji on his bed. He drew me near to himself. I praised my luck for having come on the crest of good news. It was nearly 1:30. One hears that the information had arrived in official Pune at 10 a.m. One felt surprised at the cruelly tortuous length of red tape. On all sides were friends. I recognized among them Mahadev, Vallabhai, Rajgopalachari, Rajendra Prasad, Srimati Kasturibai Sarojini, as well as Jawaharlal's wife Kamla. Mahatma ji's slender body was emaciated to a degree, his voice barely audible. The responsibility of his physicians was grave, yet his inner vigor remained undiminished, his intellect active, his radiant personality as ever tireless. Today, to millions of hearts in India, has reached the message of this immortal spirit resting under the shadow of death's altar. In groups, men and women clad in white khadar quietly held discussions. Noticeable was the disciplined calm of this gathering inside the jail. At last, with the government's red-sealed envelope in hand, appeared the Inspector General of Prisons. After he had finished reading, Mahatma ji called his friends to discuss the communication. One understood it did not go against Mahatma ji's wishes. The great penance of the fast was now over. The lemon juice was prepared by Srimati Kamla Nehru. According to the request of the Inspector General of Prisons, it was to be given to Mahatma ji by Srimati Kasturibai. Mahadev told me that my Gitanjali song, When the Heart is Dried and Parched Up, was a favorite of Mahatma ji's. I had forgotten the tune which I once gave it. I sang it to an improvised tune. Pandit Sham Shastri read out from the Vedas. The
anxiety for all ended on a peaceful note. Gandhi remarked later,
Gurudev, did you know that by singing your song on that day, you were setting a precedence? Subsequently, that song was sung whenever I broke my fast.
Mahatma Ji, our people are wonderstruck at the impossible being made possible in these few days. There is a universal feeling of immense relief at your being saved for us. Now is the opportune moment when a definite command from you will rouse the Hindu community to make a desperate effort to win over the Mohammedans to our common cause. It is more difficult of success than your fight against untouchability, for there is deep-rooted antipathy against the Muslims in most of our people, and they also have not much love for ourselves. With reverent love, I am ever yours, Rabindranath Tagore.
Dear Gurudev, I have your beautiful letter. I am daily seeking light. This unity between Hindus and Muslims is also my life's mission. The restrictions to hamper me, but I know that when I have the light, it will pierce through the restrictions. Meanwhile, I pray, though I do not yet fast. With love, yours. I was so thrilled by the love showered by the poet, I wrote to Charlie, Gurudev is still at it. That little fast brought me many treasures. Gurudev was the richest find. If someone had said, fast to find Gurudev, I should have done it without a second thought. I was dying to find a corner in his heart. Thank God, I found it through the fast.
the Pune Pact. The reconciliation at an emotional level did not mean a compromise on the intellectual plane. Baba Sahib Ambedkar was under tremendous pressure to save the life of Mahatma Gandhi, who was on an indefinite fast totally opposed to a separate electoral constituency for the Harijans. A compromise between the leaders of caste Hindus and Ambedkar was reached and the Pune Pact was signed. Tagore was one among many who went out of their way to have an agreement in place to save Gandhi's life. It was a compromise that Tagore regretted later. Tagore expressed his anxiety that the Pune Pact was unjust for Bengal as it would cause irreparable damage to Hindu-Muslim relations.
I had to issue a press statement. I remember to have sent a cable to the Prime Minister not to delay in accepting the proposal about communal awards sent to him by Mr. Gandhi. At that moment, the situation existed which was extremely painful, not affording us the least time or peace of mind to think quietly over the possible consequences of the Pune Pact, which had already been arrived at in a conference in which no responsible representatives of Bengal took part. It was a commitment which I now realize was a mistake from the point of view of our country's permanent interest. That Indian members belonging to provinces different from ours should not only remain apathetic but actively take part in Bengal's misfortune is terribly ominous, presaging no good for our future history.
Dear Gurudev, I have read your press message regarding the pact in so far as it applies to Bengal. It caused me deep grief to find that you were misled by very deep affection for me and by your confidence in my judgment into approving of a pact which was discovered to have done a grave injustice to Bengal. But I am not at all convinced that there was any error made. I applied my mind to it and discussed it with friends who ought to know, and I was satisfied that there was no injustice done to Bengal. If I felt convinced that there was an error of judgment, I would strain every nerve to see that the error was rectified. Yours, sincerely.
Dear Mahatma Ji, I am fully convinced that if the Pune Pact is accepted without modification, it will be a source of perpetual communal jealousy, leading to constant disturbance of peace and a fatal break in the spirit of mutual cooperation. Yours with reverence and love.
Another letter a few days later, the last on the subject.
Dear Mahatma Ji, at this unhappy moment, I am sure you need complete rest after the strenuous days of mental and physical strain.
I do not wish to trouble you with any detailed discussion of the Pune Pact. You are satisfied that there was no injustice done to Bengal. I wish I could accept your words and remain silently contented about it. But it has become impossible for me, knowing for certain that the communal award advocated by the pact, if it remains unaltered, will inflict a serious injury upon the social and political life in Bengal.
Justice is an important aspect of truth, and if it is allowed to be violated for the sake of immediate peace or speedy cutting of some political knots, in the long run it is sure to come back to those who are apparently benefited by it, and will claim a very heavy price for the concession cheaply gained.
Was it the politics of humanity or the humanity of politics? In 1933, Gandhi decided to fast for 21 days, once again in Pune. This time it was in protest against the attitude of the orthodox upper caste Hindus in Guruvayur temple in Kerala, who discriminated severely against lower caste Hindus visiting the temple and worshipping there. Gandhi called his fast a penance for self-purification.
Dear Gurudev, it is just now 1:45 am and I think of you and other friends. If your heart endorses contemplated fast, I want your blessings again. My love and respects, yours.
It is not unlikely that you are mistaken about the imperative necessity of your vow. And when we realize there is grave risk of its fatal termination, we shudder at the possibility of the tremendous mistake never having the opportunity of being rectified. I cannot help beseeching you not to offer such an ultimatum of mortification to God for his scheme of things, with reverence and love.
Gandhi, not unexpectedly, was unmoved. The fast had to be taken to its planned conclusion.
The logical consequence of your example, if followed, will be an elimination of all noble souls from the world, leaving the morally feeble and downtrodden multitude to sink into the fathomless depth of ignorance and iniquity. You have no right to say that this process of penance can only be efficacious through your own individual endeavor and that for others it has no meaning. If that were true, you ought to have performed it in absolute secrecy as a special mystic rite which claims its one sacrifice beginning and ending in yourself. The suffering that has been caused to me by the vow you have taken has compelled me to write to you thus, for I cannot bear the sight of a sublimely noble career journeying towards a finality which to my mind lacks a perfectly satisfying justification, with deepest pain and love.
Tagore did not desire further comment and declared the correspondence closed. In the wake of the earthquake of 1934 in Bihar, he was compelled to write to Gandhi again.
The press reports that you, in a recent speech referring to the recent earthquake in Bihar, spoke as follows.
I want you to be superstitious enough to believe with me that the earthquake is a divine chastisement for the great sin we have committed against those whom we describe as Harijans.
I find it difficult to believe this. But if this be your real view on the matter, I do not think it should go unchallenged. Herewith you will find a rejoinder from me. If you are correctly reported in the press, would you kindly send it to the press? Mahatma ji was gracious to publish my rejoinder in the Harijan. It has caused me painful surprise to find Mahatma Gandhi accusing those who blindly follow their own custom of untouchability, of having brought down God's vengeance upon certain parts of Bihar, evidently specially selected for his desolating displeasure. It is all the more unfortunate for this kind of unscientific view of things is too readily accepted by a large section of our countrymen. I keenly feel the iniquity of it. I am compelled to utter a truism in asserting that physical catastrophes have their inevitable origin in certain combination of physical facts. What is truly tragic about it is the fact that the kind of argument which Mahatma ji uses by exploiting an event of cosmic disturbance far better suits the psychology of his opponents than his own. And it would not have surprised me if they had taken this opportunity of holding him and his followers responsible for the visitation of divine anger.
The bard of Shantiniketan is Gurudev for me as he is for the residents of that great institution. But Gurudev and I early discovered certain differences, and it cannot suffer from Gurudev's latest utterance on my linking the Bihar calamity with the sin of untouchability. He had the perfect right to utter his protest when he believed that I was in error. My profound regard for him would make me listen to him more readily than to any other critic. But in spite of my having read his statement 3 times, I adhere to what I have written in these columns. I have long believed that physical phenomena produce results both physical and spiritual. The converse I hold to be equally true. To me, the earthquake was no caprice of God nor a result of a meeting of mere blind forces. We do not know all the laws of God nor their workings. Visitations like droughts, floods, earthquake and the like, though they seem to have only physical origin, are for me somehow connected with man's morals. Even as I cannot help believing in God, though I cannot prove his existence to the skeptics, in the like manner, I cannot prove the connection of the sin of untouchability with the Bihar visitation, even though the connection is instinctively felt by me.
And that was that. As he put it, the subject of God's will was in the realm of faith and had no need of debate. A year passed. Tagore was a year older, but had aged greatly in his institution building efforts at Shantiniketan. Who else could he turn to for understanding?
My dear Mahatma ji. Period of my waning life and health with deepest love.
Dear Gurudev, you may depend upon my straining every nerve to find the required money. I am groping. I am trying to find a way out. It will take me some time before I can report the result of my search to you. It is unthinkable that you should have to undertake another begging mission at your age. The necessary funds must come to you without your having to stir out of Shantiniketan. With reverential love, yours. A few months later, when Gurudev was in Delhi with his troop from Shantiniketan, I wrote, Dear Gurudev, God has blessed my poor effort and here is the money. May God keep you for many a year to come. Yours with love.
With it was attached a letter that read, Please find the enclosed draft for rupees 60,000, which we believe is the deficit on the expenses on Shantiniketan, which to cover, you have been exhibiting your art from place to place. When we heard this, we felt humiliated. We believe that at your advanced stage and in your weak state of health, you ought not to have to undertake these arduous tours. You are not only the greatest poet of India, you are the poet of humanity. Your poems remind one of the hymns of the ancient rishis. For reasons which need not be stated, we prefer to remain anonymous.
Early in 1937, I wrote to him about Shantiniketan once more.
My dear Mahatma ji, I have taken the liberty of nominating you as a life trustee of our Vishwa Bharati.
In these last frail years of my life, it will give me great consolation to know that the institution to which I have given the best part and energy of my life will have you as one of its guardians.
Gandhi was compelled to decline the invitation as he felt he could not do justice to the position. He also chided Tagore on his continued preoccupation with fundraising.
I understand that in spite of your promise to me in Delhi, you are about to go to Ahmedabad on a begging expedition. I was grieved, and I would ask you on bended knees to forego the expedition if it is really decided upon. In any case, I would beg of you to recall my appointment as one of the trustees. With love and reverence, yours.
Not surprisingly, Tagore was hurt.
Allow me to be frank and to tell you that possibly your own temperament prevents you to understand the dignity of the mission, which I am glad to culture of the human mind function, to realize he's specially called upon to collaborate with his Creator in adding to the joy of existence.
I thought myself to be so near you that I could dare playfully accuse you of a contemplated breach of promise. My motive was absolutely plain. I wanted somehow or other to wean you from any further begging expedition, a phrase you and I often used enough in Delhi. I hope this letter will undo the grief that has been caused to you by my previous letter. With love and reverence, yours.
On September 10, 1937, the poet was suddenly taken ill. He had been in Kolkata, and when he returned to Shantiniketan at night, he fell unconscious. As the telegraph office was then closed, the staff at the railway sent a telephonic message to Kolkata at 1 o'clock at night, asking that the doctor should be sent to Shantiniketan immediately. Dr. Sir Neelakanta Sarkar left for Shantiniketan at 2 o'clock by car and reached there early in the morning. He was completely unconscious for 62 hours and all hopes were given up. Once he regained consciousness, the recovery was very rapid. As soon as he could speak, he said that he wanted to write a poem or to paint a picture. As writing a poem would be most strenuous, he asked for his pigments and brushes. Within a few hours, he painted quite a large picture. The whole of the foreground was a dark and ill-defined veil of primitive forest. A warm flood of golden light broke through in the center, revealing a distant view on the other side. When he was told about the anxious message from Gandhi inquiring about his health, he responded,
Dear Mahatma ji, the first thing that welcomed me into the world of life after the period of stupor I passed through was your message of affectionate anxiety, and it was fully worth the cost of sufferings which were unremitting in their long persistence. With grateful love.
Dear Gurudev, your precious letter is before me. You have anticipated me. I wanted to write as soon as Sir Neelakanta sent me his last reassuring wire. But my right hand needs rest. I did not want to dictate. The left hand works slow. This is merely to show you what love some of us bear towards you. I verily believe that the silent prayers from the hearts of your admirers have been heard and you are still with us. You are not a mere singer of the world. Your living word is a guide and an inspiration to thousands. May you be spared for many a long year yet to come. With deep love.
Between 1938 and 1939, Tagore paid glorious tribute to Gandhi. An ascetic himself, he does not frown upon the joys of others, but works for the enlivening of their existence day and night. He exalts poverty in his own life, but no man in India has striven more assiduously than he for the material welfare of his people. A reformer with the zeal of a revolutionary, he imposes severe restraints on the very passions If he proposes an experiment for society, he must first subject himself to its ordeals. If he calls for a sacrifice, he must first pay its price himself. This man seems greater than his virtues, great as they are. His emphasis on the truth and the purity of the means from which he has evolved his creed of non-violence is but another aspect of his deep and insistent humanity. He will always be remembered as one who made his life a lesson for all ages to come. A moving tribute, wholly authentic, and finally an admission. I should confess that I do not always see eye to eye with Mahatma ji, by which I mean that had I been endowed with his force of character, my scheme of work would have been different.
But though I may have the imagination to conceive, I have not the power to carry out. Only a few men in the world have this power. And since our country has had the good fortune of giving birth to such a man, the way should be kept clear for his progress. I certainly would never think of impeding it.
In 1940, Gandhi visited Shantiniketan. A small reception was arranged for him on the afternoon of his arrival. It was held at Amrakunj, a spot rendered sacred by its association with the late Maharshi Rabindranath, Gurudev's father. The function
and the eternal value of our true endeavors will be revealed.
I am come here to leave behind all the cares and burdens of politics simply to have Gurudev's darshans and blessings. I have often claimed myself to be an accomplished beggar, but a more precious gift has never dropped into my beggar's bowl than Gurudev's blessings today. I know that his blessings are with me always, but it has been my privilege to receive the same from him in person.
Gandhi was taking his leave from Shantiniketan. Tagore handed him a letter. Among other things, it sought Gandhi's interest in Vishwa Bharati.
And now, before you take your leave from Shantiniketan, I make my fervent appeal to you. Accept this institution under your care, giving it an assurance of permanence if you consider it to be a national asset. Vishwa Bharati is like a vessel which is carrying the cargo of my life's best treasure.
In 1941, Tagore turned 80.
The World War was already into its third year.
At a function organized to celebrate the landmark birthday, his essay on the crisis in civilization was read out on his behalf. The wheels of fate will someday compel the English to give up their Indian empire. But what kind of India will they leave behind? What stark misery!
When the stream of their administration of centuries runs dry at last, what a waste of mud and filth they will leave behind them. I had at one time believed that the springs of civilization would issue out of the heart of Europe.
But today, when I'm about to quit the world, that faith has gone bankrupt altogether. And yet, I shall not commit the grievous sin of losing faith in man. A felicitation was in order. It was sent on the occasion of felicitation held earlier.
4 not enough. May you finish 5.
Thanks message. But 4 is impertinence. 5 intolerable.
Did either of them know that this would be the final communication exchanged? Tagore breathed his last on August 7, 1941. As early as the January of 1929, Meera Ben, Madeline Slade, a disciple of Gandhiji, had written to Tagore after returning from Shantiniketan. I now realize how Shantiniketan and Sabarmati are two fair daughters of the same great motherland, both with exquisite beauties of their own, different to look upon outwardly and yet with that fundamental likeness which only daughters of the same parent can bear. Tagore had replied in his inimitable style, "Human life has its 2 aspects. One is the discipline of truth and the other is the fullness of expression."
Sabarmati represents that discipline of truth. For Mahatma Ji is born with the pure fire of truth. His nature is one with it. Being a poet, my mission is to inspire life's fullness of expression. And I hope that Shantiniketan carries that ideal in all its activities. According to the Upanishad, the reconciliation of the contradiction between tapasya and ananda is at the root of creation. Mahatma Ji is the prophet of tapasya, and I am the poet of ananda.
Dear friends, it was a wonderful evening.
I request all of you to be seated for 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
So that we can give our respects to the excellent artists who have performed just now. Please be seated. It will not take more than 5 minutes.
Friends, please be seated. It was a wonderful evening today. Actually, Vijay Padaki wanted to have some questions on the play, but it's already 8:15. So we'll be winding off. I thank Kusuma Bhat and also Neelakanta for having provided us this evening's program by their endowment instituted in the Institute of World Culture. And the play was excellent, and that was heartening. Every letter ended with love and reverence. Actually, we can call it as love and reverence to both the great souls, Gandhiji and Rabindranath Tagore. We end here. I thank all of you for having attended this program, drama, and I request Kusuma Bhat and Neelakanta to join their felicitating our artists.
Thank you. Thank you for being such a lovely audience. It's a great pleasure performing to this group. It's now my pleasure to introduce the team to you as they come on. The narrator, Vijay. The actor exploring the life of Gandhi, Neelakanta. The actor exploring the life of Rabindranath Tagore, Karan Singh. And the young man who has set up the stage for you and the lighting, Mike Tagore. There you are. So the team will be more than happy to interact with you. Feel free to ask them questions, share your comments, your reflections, your first thoughts, anything that comes to your mind.
Before we get to that, Professor Vijay Padaki, the playwright and the director of the play.
Thank you.
On behalf of Neelakanta, I would like to garland Mr. Professor Padaki, sir.
You want to drop these two seats, bring them together?
All right, Vijay, we'll stand. We'll stand.
All right. Who'd like to start? Anybody? Yes.
No, details of the Pune pact.
Good question. You raise your hand.
Pune pact. Sir, go ahead.
Sir, it is an excellent performance. I think they deserve standing ovation.
Sir, please be seated.
No.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Please be seated. No?
Can you clarify the details of the Pune pact?
You want to talk about the Pune pact? You have mics, so you can give it to me.
Yeah, you can give it to me.
Actually, a lot is known about the Pune Pact. It was where you had the major disagreement between Ambedkar and Gandhi. And it's described by the narrator as well. But actually, thank you for the question. It would be nice if members of the audience added more from your reading and from your understanding of history. If you want to add more about the Pune Pact, it would be very nice. Who'd like to do that?
We want the answer from you. What is your answer? The Pune pact details.
All right. Anything more than what was described in the play would be an overkill, but it's very simple. It was started by the British, the separation. It started with the separation of Bengal. And when Tagore saw that, he read into it. He saw the political motives, that they are trying to divide us by religion. And at that time, Ambedkar said, if you're going to do that about Hindus and Muslims, what about the Dalits? They're not Hindus. You've never accepted them as Hindus. All right? So why not a separate constituency for the Dalits? And that was what started it all. Gandhi said, never. He is not going to allow that. They are Hindus, they're ours. So he went on a fast. It was almost sure he would die. The fast was serious. He is taking it very seriously. And he was not budging. And finally, with a lot of what they call backroom drama, they agreed to get Ambedkar to step down. And the Pune Pact was signed. That's the Pune Pact. But what is interesting is, as far as this play is concerned, and the relationship between Gandhi and Tagore, is that in that moment of high tension, the one person Gandhi wanted to see was Tagore. And Tagore took that 4-day journey in those days by train to be by his side at Yerwada prison. That's the interesting part. Does this help?
Just one point to add to that. Just now we saw the exchange between Gurudev and Mahatma. While they had their own disagreements, serious disagreements, respect was not lost. But the second point is that both of them had the other's point of view and thought about it immensely, and they course corrected several times, what we also saw and what we have read. Likewise, the Pune Pact, what you are talking about, while Ambedkar himself was at the forefront of his own experiences, what he had as a boy and growing up. But what we have to remember is that during his course of life or activities after the Pune Pact in 1932, he himself had quite a lot of disagreements with his own followers. When they started telling that we should have a separate thing and things like that, he went back and started telling them that, hey, this is not what I meant. This is one country and we are all there in it. And he refused to identify himself apart from this land. So that is something which we have to take away. So everyone, it was new for everybody at that point of time, what was happening. So not that everybody had a vision that what will happen after 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the line. So when we see or follow Ambedkar himself, what he was thinking in 1925, what he was thinking in 30, 35, 40, 45, it kept changing in his own life. So let us not get hung up on one pact, because that is one juncture of that particular movement of freedom. Yeah, we may not have to call it as course correction, but that's a juncture. So we all live and we progress.
I feel Ambedkar corrected himself.
I won't say corrected. So it was his view in 32, particular point in time. So we all have those same experiences, not that like Ambedkar ji or like Mahatma or any one of them. In our life itself, we change quite a lot, our own point of view. So why are we hung up on one particular pact?
That's for discussion, nothing more.
This question.
Oh,
One moment.
Favorite, sir, of the two, poet or prophet? Who is your favorite, sir? I would like to know.
Ma'am, I think his hand has been going up for the first 30 minutes.
She has put me in a spot. I'll tell you one thing. I'm
That is BMT spot, is it?
he put the label professor before my name. He repeatedly referred to me as a professor. And so now I'm going to be a professor. And professors are very good not at touching their nose like this, but around. So a roundabout answer to your question. Please sit down. Oh, you are sitting down. That's a high chair. One of the things that attracted us to this play, it was originally just a manuscript, all the exchanges put together. And there was much more. It was actually about over 2 hours. And we said we can't hold an audience for 2 hours without an interval. And if you have an interval, the momentum is gone. So how much can we do in how little? So we started compressing it, and we said, let's try to strike a balance. At times Gandhi's arguments are powerful, at times Tagore's arguments are powerful, so let's try and strike a balance and show our own people how equally great both were. But in addition, except for the people of Bengal, the rest of India doesn't know as much about Tagore as they know about Gandhi. You see? And how much do we know about Gandhi? What we know about Gandhi is from Ben Kingsley. So we have, first of all, a limited idea of Gandhi, but we know only Gandhi, we don't know Tagore. So one of our objectives was to present Tagore and show you what a great mind he was. We only know him as somebody who wrote our national anthem. But here's another person, he was at the forefront of the freedom movement. He didn't put himself there, he didn't project himself there. He knew that Gandhi is the right person to lead it. But the intellectual force was always there. This is the important thing. I'm going to share another story with you in a little while. I want to encourage some more questions and comments, but remind me to share this other story with you.
Sir, let him go first and then let him
Do you want to finish?
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you for a delightful evening. I heard in the beginning that you have completed 120 plays and this is 121. I have a comment and a recommendation. The comment is that we need to do another 120 across this country. And the rationale, as a member of this audience this evening, I recommend, what is going unnoticed, though we all deeply feel in our heart, is you have, in 90 minutes, given a universal message not to India, but to the world, that get rid of the colonial phrase that we as adults, as statesmen, should tolerate differences. What you have guys conveyed today is, here are two apostles who celebrated the differences and did not tolerate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so happy that it came from the audience. Right? For us, this is what holds the play. A political maturity of those times, a political maturity that respected differences and still maintained genuine respect and love for each other. And we must ask ourselves, when did we lose it? How did we lose it? Where has that political maturity gone? If you look at the first 2 or 3 rounds of general elections and the quality of discussion in Parliament, it's something different. Absolutely different. The Constituent Assembly, the level of debate and discussion that led to the Constitution. What happened? For us, through the period, long period of study and research and preparing ourselves, that was the most important thing. Thank you for a good question.
I don't know if this is a question or a comment, but before that, thank you for a great evening. We do appreciate it. It's a phenomenal evening for me. I just landed from Los Angeles just 2 days ago. I'm Neely's brother, and thank you for providing the opportunity to see this. And again, this question could be because of my inability to understand the past, whatever happened. Obviously, Gandhiji was, in my opinion, again, was adamant because he did not listen to Ambedkar, in bringing about Dalits or making Dalits Hindu as well. And he alienated Dalits, he alienated Muslims. Wouldn't we have been better off bringing Dalits together? Maybe we would have, probably not. I don't know what the word is. Would have been able to have a better Hindu organization in terms of India to fight the Muslims. This is probably more ignorance than anything else. I'm asking this question. We are fighting now, and he was adamant, in my opinion. Obviously, he would not listen to anybody. With all the things going on, with a different law to the Muslims, and not following it's because it's a Hindu nation, am I right? So all these things, wouldn't it have been better if he, went along with Dalits joining the Hindus? That way, it would have been a better situation than what we are in right now.
Difficult to say, because we are trying to, first of all, imagine the past and reconstruct the past and reconstruct it to our current theory. It's difficult to answer that question, but it's a thought. We can say it's a thought. It's an interesting thought. Since you brought this up, here's another very beautiful section of the play. At least there are half a dozen lines in the play that the actors really enjoy, and they're moved by it. But here's one. Tagore tells Gandhi, he's actually chiding him. He says, only by educating their children together for 2 to 3 generations will you overcome this prejudice. There's no point in talking about Hindu-Muslim unity like that, as if you're going to snap your fingers and it'll happen. It's things you do. So he's asking Gandhi, what have you done? Why is he doing that? Why is he saying that? Because he's created a school and he knows the value of education. He has created an alternate school. So, doing things to divide is not helping us. What have we done to unite? We only talk about it twice a year, on Independence Day or on Gandhi Jayanti. What have we done?
He has unified Hindus and Muslims, I feel, because he did not agree with a separate constitution for Ambedkar's demand for the Dalits. I feel Gandhiji has unified all Hindus, Muslims and the minority.
Gandhiji tried.
He has succeeded.
Yeah.
He has succeeded, I differ with your point. Yeah.
Here's something to, again, since it has come up, here's something else to think about. Ambedkar, at one point in time, by the way, we have a very good play on Ambedkar. Ambedkar, at one point in time, was seriously considering Christianity for the Dalits. He was greatly moved by a Christian missionary. He was very close to her. It was a woman. Ambedkar was close to many women. All right? He actually had a mistress in Germany. It's a solid biography. You cannot dare to say that in public today, your house will be burned down. But anyway, it was Christian. But much later he said, no, a different identity for the Dalits should be from a faith which is born in this country. So he chose Buddhism. At one point he was seriously considering Christianity as the liberating religion. Okay, now, that's something in common with Gandhi. Gandhi was greatly moved by Christianity. His favorite music was Christian. His favorite hymns. And today we're doing everything possible to suppress that. We're saying, don't play Abide With Me in public meetings. But that was Gandhi's favorite hymn. Right? So that was another thing they had in common, Ambedkar and Gandhi. Yes, sir. Next.
I think you have given us a cue that we have to organize a play on Ambedkar. So it is here. So we will do that.
I have to tell you, you have to get special insurance for your premises if you want to do the play on Ambedkar here.
You have a script of this play.
We can do a reading. We have done rehearsed readings of the play. It's a very powerful play. It's a very, very powerful play.
Can we access it?
It can be done. It can be done.
Let me clarify. He said we can read it here. We can read it.
We can do a reading. We have no objection to performing. We're performers. But I'll be careful about your safety. You know, I'm just being honest.
The idea is, if you read the script before seeing the play, it would be more effective.
Okay? Yeah. Incidentally, this is of interest, this may be of interest to you. The play on Ambedkar is written by an American playwright, philosopher, good friend of ours. It took an American to do the research to write the play. Okay, any other? Because I'm waiting. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Very mundane question. A little mundane. Was there any specific reason for the actor, the Tagore, standing opposite that photograph and vice versa? Same question.
Any suggestions, any ideas from the audience of why we have the portrait of Tagore behind Gandhi? The actor playing Gandhi, he's not Gandhi, he's an actor researching Gandhi, and why we have Gandhi on the other side? These are personalities looming large over their lives. That's the general idea. Okay, here's a story that I reserved for later. This play was performed twice in the US, not by us, local American productions. One of them was in an intellectual setting. It was at the University of Iowa. They have a very strong Center for South Asian Studies. There are great Indian scholars there. It was performed there. They had me over. And I was very curious, what does this play mean to an American audience? And they said, you'll be surprised. We have the same problem of breakdown of democracy in our country. Right? We have the same problem. And they could relate to the play because you had exactly the same kind of exchanges between Adam and Jefferson. Differences, respect. They also are ruining the breakdown of the maturity in their political processes. I just thought I'd tell you this. It seems to have a universal relevance, the play.
Jefferson and
Adams. All right? And before you disappear, I want to tell you about the play we are working on just now. It's a collaboration between a university in Philadelphia and Bangalore Little Theatre. The work has begun. It's based on pretty solid archival research that shows, I'm pausing for suspense. This is called a dramatic pause. The research shows that the American War of Independence was greatly inspired by Hyder Ali and Tipu. Hyder Ali and Tipu in Mysore. The way they had military strategy, putting the British on their back foot. They were inspired. And there were exchanges between Mysore and Philadelphia via the French. Both had a common enemy, the British. To get rid of the British, both had a common ally, the French. And the French played a very important part in this connection. And the work has started. The university in Philadelphia has actually announced it. They're doing a student writing project, a competitive student writing project on it. And sooner or later, the script will start forming. I just thought I'd let you know. Is that all?
So once again, we thank the members from BLT.
One last one, sir. Was Gandhiji ambidextrous, sir?
Yes, he was. I can answer for him. Yes, yes, he was. She asked whether he was writing from both the hands. The answer is yes.
Yes, he was ambidextrous. He practiced writing the book.
I think we'll have one last question here.
You said you'd tell us why the organ was used.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
This is interesting. This is interesting. Tagore was multi-talented, obviously. Poetry, drama, prose, painting, music. And his Rabindranath Sangeet was influenced by Western melody. He composed on piano. He wrote music in notation. Indian music is not written in notation. It's oral. And even today, if you have students of Rabindranath Sangeet, practice on piano. So there's a strong Western influence, although Tagore was a champion of Indian culture. He was drawn to Western music. He genuinely admired Western sense of harmony over melody. That's Tagore. Gandhi was influenced by Christ. And every time he was in stress, he would go to his, particularly in his South Africa years, he'd go to his Christian missionary friend and ask his daughter to sing for him. And what holds this together is the organ. That's the story. We just chose the organ. We had a very talented musician who composes original music, so he put that. But we've used tracks. We've used Abide With Me. We've used Lead Kindly Light. We've used the Gitanjali poem in the track. But everything on organ.
So we would like to thank once again the founding member of Bangalore Little Theatre, Sri Neelakanta, and Dr. Kusuma for sponsoring this wonderful program. And I would like to, on behalf of Indian Institute of World Culture, thank all of you for having made time to come and witness this wonderful play which was enacted here. So once again, thank you. Good night.